Hello, I'm Porschia Parker Griffin, and I want to welcome you to the Career 101 podcast, a place for ambitious professionals and seasoned executives who want an edge in their career. We're talking about all of the things you were never taught or told when it comes to career growth, development, and change. Now, let's get into it. Today, we are talking about executive communication with Laurie Schloff. As a lifelong communication coach, Laurie Schloff helps professionals achieve outstanding relationships and results through communication. He and She Talk, Speech Gems, and Smart Speaking are three internationally translated books Laurie has written. They offer practical solutions to communication problems most organizations and individuals face. Smart Speaking was described by Communication Briefings as one of the best books ever written about speaking. Her expertise is sought after. Oprah and The Today Show have spotlighted Laurie as the guest expert on communication, and she's been featured in over 20 podcasts and publications from Cosmopolitan to the Wall Street Journal. Laurie's clients include Bain Capital, Fidelity Investments, Mass Mutual, Allstate, and Johns Hopkins. Hi, Laurie. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you for that very lively intro.
Great, great. You are a lively lady, and we are excited to have you with us to discuss executive communication. But first, we want to know a little more about you. So tell me about 7-year-old Laurie.
7-year-old Laurie. What's interesting, I always liked being in front of people. And if I wasn't a speech coach, which I really was my whole career, I would have been a singer. There was only one problem. I didn't really have too good a voice, but I entertained anyway. So I liked being in front of people. And so I get lots of thrills by being on a podcast or in the media. I guess the dopamine goes. So 7-year-old liked putting on plays.
Yeah.
I liked performing in front of friends and relatives. So I can remember all kinds of things in friends' basements where we invited the neighborhood parents to watch our shows, and I would get into it wholeheartedly. So that was 7 years. And I also loved movie stars. And to this day, I actually went to an Academy Awards party, and my friend had a red carpet out. And boy, did I relish that, walking on the red carpet. Even though I've had a very long career, I think the 7-year-old still lives within.
Yes. And it sounds like she was a performer, and I see how that could lead to you supporting people with their communication and their presentation and all that you do today. So, Laurie, tell us about some highlights or pivotal moments in your career before you started the current business that you have today.
Super. As shared, since early in my career, I've been a coach. However, my training was in speech and language pathology. And I've always been very achievement oriented. I'm a bit of a geek. So when it comes to, let's say, reading, rather than light fiction, I might read about the 12 parts of persuasion and communication. So I've always been very interested in the field. And there wasn't really an opportunity to do what was called coaching when I first started in speech and language pathology. There were very few coaches. Now there's zillions of coaches, as we know, Porschia. And I had the good fortune one day of running into a couple, a husband and wife, who were running a company called the Speech Improvement Company. And I was very excited because I realized I loved talking to adults, motivated adults. I loved working with people who wanted to get to the next level of success. So basically, I wanted to go into business, is what was happening. And I went through the same struggles everyone goes through with that, which is leaving regular jobs, which are secure, and going into entrepreneurship. The job I left was at Northeastern University. I was a clinical instructor in the speech department, helping graduate students learn about speech and speech pathology. So this is the good news. In the first year of being in consulting, I did better financially and in every other way. I did twice as well as I had in all the previous years. So apparently it was my calling, and I stayed in speech coaching till this day.
Yeah, that is amazing, Lori. You mentioned a lot of great things there. We also have an entrepreneurship series on this podcast. And then I would say about 25% of our clients have an entrepreneurial idea or endeavor that they're interested in. So when you take yourself back to working for the university, what was it that really motivated you to start your own business and take the leap?
I felt, I think, more secure. So, in other words, there was the passion for going into business. You know how sometimes you can tell when you're excited about something? So, I heard my soon to be mentor on the radio talking about speech coaching, and my heart actually started beating fast. A little bit like falling in love and falling in love with a profession. And then the timing was right. Northeastern University, where I was working, was going through organizational changes. And so everyone was feeling a little vulnerable, as many people are feeling now. And also, I had the security of having had lucky. I met my husband around that time, and he seemed to feel comfortable with me not having that steady income for a while. But as I said, things progress very rapidly. I will give a cautionary note, though. I encourage anyone who has a passion for coaching, and my field is very unique, executive communication coaching. By the way, Porschia, I wrote an article on what is executive communication coaching. I want to make sure I get it to you, and so you can send it to your listeners. I do want to caution people that it's much harder to make it because of the amount of competition that there is now, that there wasn't at the time when I got in. So timing does matter.
You are so right, Lori. Nowadays, there are a ton of coaches. I started coaching 12 years ago, and we're coming up on our 11th year in business. And there weren't a lot of coaches back then. There weren't a lot of coaches when you got started. And then now there are a ton of coaches. And so people really, I think they have to be discerning about who to listen to and all of that. So we're definitely going to put a link to your article in the show notes because I think that will definitely help people as well. And I was actually just talking to a potential client before this call, and she was telling me she checked out the podcast and really wanted to make sure a coach she found knew their stuff. You're absolutely right about the competition. Yeah. Why did you decide to focus on communication as part of your expertise?
It's always been a passion of mine. I just love observing. I love helping, and I love planning and seeing results. So it's that combination. So being interested in communication wasn't something that I was out of the blue that I picked from a list. It was always a genuine interest. Last night I noticed, for example, a newscaster had different behaviors than she usually did. So that's the kind of thing I just noticed intuitively. Though a lot of people, when they're with me, say they feel self-conscious about how they speak, but that's not necessary because when I'm not working, I'm not really about to start giving advice.
Yeah, they might be thinking that you're going to critique them. So, Lori, we discussed how to be a better communicator on the podcast back during episode 26. Why do you think discussing communication at work is important?
Here's really how I see the world, that we have our expertise. You're an architect, you're an engineer, you're an artist. So that's that toolkit, that experience. And then the other piece is, how do you communicate that with your team, with the outside world? And my job is to help people use communication tools as a road, as a means, as a pathway to success. Because I truly believe, and definitely Portia weigh in on this, that the way somebody communicates or not, for good or for bad, and none of us are perfect, and none of us are gonna get 100% of the jobs or the likability that we want. 80 or 90% is pretty good too.
Yeah, I completely agree.
You do agree?
Yes, and I talk to especially a lot of our executive clients and then clients that are in like a management or leadership role. I've said so many times, it's not necessarily about what you say, it's about what your team heard and then the actions they took based on what you said. So I'm sure you've had this too, Lori, where you have a client that says, I told them what to do and they just didn't do it.
Exactly. And now we're getting into what are some of the concerns that are brought up. So a huge one is what you just said, Portia, which is clarity, and the way often that the frustrated manager puts it is, oh my gosh, he goes on and on. I don't know what he's talking about. Or they'll use the word being concise. In fact, I've developed a couple of big full scale programs because leadership did not feel that their managers, their VPs, reported to them in a way that was effective. One program was called executive briefings, and I have to make my speech joke. It wasn't about underwear. Okay, that's my little joke. Okay. And then again, another group of leaders said, we don't have a lot of time. These people have to be very effective in how they report and how they appear and how they present at our meetings, at board meetings. We really want to be able to trust them. So I always say that I love taking people to the next level.
Yeah.
The other thing about my work is I get engaged for results. So it's not unusual to meet someone on a Monday who has a meeting on a Friday. And I always have my phone available in case a client texts me and says how great they did.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And so I want to clarify a little bit for the listeners, Lori. I've found that many professionals and executives struggle with their communication skills as a whole, but can you explain what executive communication is?
Sure. It's having the toolkit of best practices that helps you to lead and interact with your team and external clients or stakeholders in the most effective way possible. And we take the word effective, it means getting the results that you want. Now, we don't want everyone to be the same. So, Portia, one of the first questions I'll ask someone when I'm doing the initial consultation is, let's pick your style words. What are those? I ask them to pick 2 words that describe how they'd like to come across in a meeting, how they'd like people to describe them. And I ask them to pick one that's more mental. And Aristotle talked about the mode of persuasion, logos, appealing to the intellect, and one that's more heart-centered, more emotional to and through relationships. And we call that pathos. So one, if you want to do it with me, I can tell you what mine are. One pathos, one relationship one, and one logical one. So, for example, someone might say they want to be knowledgeable and approachable. They want to be confident and expert. So, what's the goal of communication, of executive communication coaching? It's helping people to live up to their style words. So let's say, and it is actually true, one of my style words is approachable, but for whatever reason, I'm tired, annoyed about something. I couldn't find any ripe bananas, whatever the heck it is. I want to hold myself accountable for not being as approachable as I'd like. It's also knowing what are your particular goals. So when we meet a leader, we'll say, are you comfortable doing a communication 360? Either you or I can talk to a peer, a leader, and someone who reports to you. And Portia, I asked them 2 questions. I say, what are 3 qualities about Joanne that are very effective in her leadership communication? And what are 3 qualities you feel she could improve? And then what happens is we end up with a goal plan. Now, that's from my speech pathology background, very structured. So clients who work with me do get a goal plan in writing. and we hold ourselves accountable for those goals. I'll pick on the word executive. I suppose you could substitute leader, and I do use the word leader a lot. So it's someone who actually has a role of leader or aspiring leaders, because everyone could use this toolkit. When I say toolkits, I mean it literally, that I've come up with for presentations, 26 tools. We call it the Presence 26 Toolkit. So today I worked with a woman from a big company called Iron Mountain. They're $1 billion company who stores stuff.
Yes, I've heard of that.
Some big storage. That must be pretty big storage. That's not a little storage shed. So the tools she worked on were a 4-step process for controlling her slides. That's, we all know, we are so sick of slides being ineffective and wordy and all that. And she's also working on analyzing her listener so that she prioritizes what the leader she prioritizes what the leader she'll be speaking to cares about. And I want your listeners to see it a little bit like a funnel. When you're planning an executive presentation, into the funnel goes what you care about, what topics are important to you, and what the leader or person you're talking to cares about. And out of the funnel comes the topics you can possibly cover in the time you have. Time's very important. So devoting the most time to the most important things is important. So what we found, and actually I just worked with her today, what we found is she had a lot of topics she was going to cover that weren't that relevant to this leader she was talking to. Remember the motto from the civil rights movement, keep your eyes on the prize. I am so often using that with my clients. The prize is appealing to this leader, influencing this leader. It's not talking about 12 other things that she doesn't care about.
Yes, and yes, you said so many great things, Laurie. I don't know if you saw me, but I was taking notes. I loved what you said about picking your style words. I think that's so important. And then how one was more mental or
Yes.
logical, and one was more heart-centered and relationship focused. And then finally, your big point about discussing what's important to you, and then also what's important to the person that you're talking to. And I'd love your thoughts on this, because I've told many leaders this when they've told me, oh, I wrote an email about that, or I had a whole meeting about X, Y, and Z, and no one remembered, or no one did, what they wanted them to do.
Yeah.
I've tended to find that those leaders were jam-packing so much stuff
Too
in
much.
the meeting or in the email. And I've told people you need to boil it down to 3 or 4 bullet points, main ideas that you want people to get from that meeting, especially if they're your direct reports, that you want them to get from that meeting or that email, because most people can't even just really mentally keep up with your list of 12 things that you wanted to talk about, and that were probably just important to that person, not necessarily important to who they were talking to, your bigger point. But that's just some feedback that I've given to quite a few executives. I'd love your thoughts on that, because I think it weaves in with what you were saying. The Career 101 podcast is brought to you by Fly High Coaching, where we help our clients soar to their full potential. More and more professionals and executives are setting out to achieve their career goals. But without the right support, it can be difficult, if not impossible. Whether you need career coaching, interview coaching, or a program with a professional resume and a LinkedIn makeover, we're here to help. Could your career use some 911? It's not uncommon for executives and professionals to feel a little overwhelmed, stuck, or confused when it comes to their career or income. There are other people who want to know how to ramp up their success, consistently achieve their goals, and make a bigger impact. After hundreds of clients came to me with the same issues, I started recording the patterns for the Career 911 Masterclass, solving the top 5 challenges executives and professionals have. In the free masterclass, I share the exact strategies our clients use to tackle the top 5 problems. Check out the link in our show notes.
I love what you're saying. And I have something called speech gems, little mottos I've developed over the years. So here's one I'd rather have you do 5 points well than 50 in a frenzy. And here's a word I think listeners will like, the word pace. Pace is the amount of thoughts or ideas you produce in a certain amount of time. It's different than speed. Speed is the number of words you produce. Pace is the number of thoughts. So if I'm in advanced chemistry and I've never had a chemistry class, this actually happened to me in high school, that's why it's top of mind, I will not know what the heck is going on. I actually cried to my mom, please get me out of that class. I don't know why I'm in there. So as soon as they dropped me down to regular chemistry, not advanced, I could keep up. I wasn't great, but I could keep up. So we've all had that examples when there's just too much coming at us. It's too fast paced. So you are absolutely right. Another thing I heard you say, absolutely, there's been a fair amount of research on how many points people love. And they do love 3. I cheat a lot. I have the 4 this and the 4 that, but the rule of 3, people love it. And I teach people to actually use what's called digital enumeration, or your fingers. So there's 3 points to make. You have to have it near your mouth, because if it's over here, you're asking people to go to too many directions. So 3 points, first, second, third. And it's not that easy because I'm like holding down my little finger.
Love it.
Rule of 3.
The rule of 3. I love also rather the person do 5 points well than 50 in a frenzy. Yes, and yes to all of that. Laurie, I think we've started touching on some of this, but I still want to ask you about it. Earlier, you mentioned a concern could be around clarity and just being effective. But I want to know from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen executives and professionals have with executive communication?
One I'm seeing a lot lately. In order to be an effective presenter, you need to be able to think mind over mouth. And I'm going to insert something in there. Mind, paper, mouth. Now, it doesn't have to be paper, it could be your device. But the way most adults are able to think most clearly about what they want to say is by having an idea, putting it into a few words or bullets, and then speaking at the meeting. And even at the meeting. So Portia's talking about this or that, and I'm saying, and I'm saying, I have my bullets. The time devoted to preparation has so decreased because, and I know you've seen this, I'm sure, meeting after meeting, people seem to not have control of their schedules. And so if there's any way listeners can sneak in 5 minutes, 10 minutes to think about what's going to come up, what might I add to this meeting coming up, whether there's an agenda or not, thinking in advance of what you might want to say, which leads us to, there's a difference between knowing things and speaking about things. And so coaches do cringe a little bit when we hear people say, oh, I know that topic well, but we're saying to ourselves, yeah, but that doesn't mean you can speak well about it. Oh, I'm getting too excited, Portia. I'm getting too excited because I want to say one more thing and then react, which is if you see someone who's a great speaker at a town hall or whatever, and they don't seem to be using notes, nothing, they're just quote unquote winging it, I guarantee you that they've internalized either a template or maybe even given that talk or a similar talk many times.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And want to circle back to what you said because I hear this a lot as a coach. What you said when people say, "Oh, I know that," or "I've heard that before." And I think we live in a time where there's so much content out there. There's so many podcast episodes and videos and blog posts, if you're a reader, that it's easy for people to think, "Oh, I've heard that. I know that." But and this is to a point that you made earlier, something I ask people is, but are you getting the results that you want from that in your life today? So it's one thing to mentally understand something, a concept, but it's another thing to get that result. And I heard you mention that you're in the results business earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that goes to your point.
And also, I have a lot of respect for self-awareness. You can't know everything. I know I don't know everything about myself. It took me, I remember early in my career, my mentor said, "Did you know when you listen to someone in a group, you put your chin up?" Almost as if I'm catching what they're saying. And he said, "That looks standoffish." I had no idea I was doing that. And
Yeah.
that's just a simple example. So I think that's one of the benefit of a communication coach is sometimes she will see things you're not seeing, and even better, have the techniques to be helpful.
Agreed, agreed. I know the executive coaches on our team see that a lot in interview coaching too, right? Those little habits that we have that we don't even know we have that can come across in, to your point, a presentation or an interview that we're not even aware of. So, Lori,
Yes.
what would you say are some tips or suggestions that you'd give someone who wants to improve their executive communication?
Yeah. I thought a good way to frame it might be, what are some of the secrets, like the behind the scenes things that really matter that people want to pay attention to? So one is, how fluent are you? Do you have a smooth flow of words? And we do differ. I don't want to say genetically, but we do differ naturally. Some people are just pretty smooth with words, and there's a lot of choppiness, or most of us get better with fluency or the smooth flow of words by planning, by my little mantra, mind, paper, mouth, and practicing. My very dedicated clients, I give them a topic, like what's the benefit of exercise? And I give them a template of how to answer it. And they have to answer in 1 minute, then 45 seconds, then 30 seconds, and then 15 seconds. Of course, it's fun to use a timer to be able to control your organization and the length of what you say, which, getting back to being concise, that's a big problem. I was talking to someone yesterday, a guy, and he just had, we call it logorrhea. I'm not going to get graphic here. Something of the mouth. Logo means an excess outpouring of words. But the sweet thing about him, though, was he said, "I know I sometimes talk too much." Now, I didn't know him well enough, and I wasn't his coach, so I didn't agree with him. But of course, I was agreeing with him.
Yeah.
So
Um,
fluency. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, recap it for us. The fluency.
Fluency. Then the second one is, this will sound sarcastic, but I'm not being sarcastic. Are you interesting? Are you interesting? And there's two ways to be interesting. One is your content. And one of the tools in the Presence 26 toolkit is something I call the 4 E's for being extraordinary. I'll tell you two of them: using examples and using experiences or stories. And of course, Porschia, we've all corporate storytelling, those buzzwords in the
Mhm.
past few years. So yet, look, just to reassure everyone, you don't have to be a great storyteller, but tell little case studies, little stories that illustrate your business point, and you will be more memorable. Okay, then there's the oral part of it. There's a tool called vocal variety. So right now I'm not using any vocal variety. They don't call it a boardroom for nothing. That's another one of my little quotes. So what's vocal variety? One word in every phrase should jump out. So one word in every phrase should jump out. So we're talking about, in English, there's a way of showing dynamism, and you've got it inside your vocal cords. and it's called vocal variety. You on the word you're emphasizing, your pitch and your volume raise. And females are a bit better than males at this. I've had a heck of a lot of clients in the sciences, technology, who are just dull. Again, they don't call it a boardroom for nothing. So this is one of the key skills to work on. So those two secrets, fluency and are you interesting? Are you fluent? Are you interesting? Those are two I can start with.
I love it. And you're obviously a wealth of knowledge, Lori, that people should definitely learn more from you. I want to think about this also from the organizational perspective. So we work with some companies directly as well, which I know you do too.
Yeah.
From the company's perspective, how do you think that companies can address executive communication within their organizations?
I do believe it's great when there are communication norms that both leadership and everybody contributes to. What are some guidelines for being inclusive in a meeting? If you have certain people who lead meetings, have they been trained? Are they skilled in facilitation? And I love the word facilitation. It means make easy in French, facile, facilitate. Make participating easy. And when you drill down, what we're trying to do is normalize, have it be democratic. Everyone participates. So we're trying to get the people who talk too much to talk less, and the people who just love not talking at all, but we know they're smart and have things to contribute to talk more. And I find it's very difficult. So I think starting with creating a positive communication culture, starting with let's start with how meetings are run. Then I would go into how people present. And when we say presentation, Porschia, it could be to one person or to 100. Every time you open your mouth, gulp, it's a presentation. In the hallway, presentation. Hate to say it, folks. Sounds like the people who work at Disney. You're on.
Yep. I love what you said. I didn't know facilitate was rooted. I don't speak French, so I didn't know that the root was easy. But yes, the term facilitation does really have you think about getting other people involved, to your point. And I have a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology, and we talked a lot about norms, cultural norms, and things like that. And yeah, to your point about establishing that positive communication culture, that's something that I think companies need to be intentional about because,
yes,
to the whole point of culture, if you think there isn't one, there is one, right? So if you're not working on one, then something else is under the surface that is the norm.
right. And then a couple of other things that occurred to me, especially if you are known for your leadership or you are a leader in a role, is you are a role model for good or for bad. So let's make it for good. Are you effective much of the time? And if you're not, do you own up?
Yeah. All great points. All great points. So, Laurie, tell us more about Partners in Communication, Inc.
Sure. I love what I do. I love customizing programs for individuals and groups. I want to tell you about my legacy project because I'm in the later stages of my career and love keeping my millennial coaches busy while I sit back. No, I'm only kidding, but I am zooming away. I'll tell you that much. Much less in person, much more on Zoom, just because post-COVID, that seems to be what happened. What about you? Are you doing a lot in person?
Yeah, a lot of companies prefer virtual nowadays. I think it's definitely flipped. And then, of course, the companies that have remote teams in different locations, it's just easier for
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah. Otherwise, it's just a huge challenge, expense-wise and travel-wise. Yeah, absolutely. So my legacy project is called Train the Presentation Coach Certificate Program. It's a program designed for people who are already coaches or communications professionals, learning and development or training professionals who love communication and want to learn this Presence 26 toolkit in order to help others in their organization. I am not trying to replace my team because we all have advanced degrees, but I am very much wanting to spread good practices and presentations around. It's a 20-hour program, which has 3 components: learning the toolkit, learning communication coaching skills, and having real clients and
Yeah.
noting their results.
Yeah. And I think it's powerful to have an internal coach, especially at some of these organizations that, to your point, are really huge and they can keep your team busy. But there's also great to have that internal champion that can keep the work going on throughout and over time. So that's great. We will
Thank
be
you.
providing a link to your website and your other social channels in our show notes so people can find you online. But what
Thank
is the best
you.
way for someone to get in touch with you, Laurie?
I would say email or text. I actually like communicating with clients by text. So you feel free to put my cell number as well in the show notes, and I can make sure that you have that. So email or text. It's Laurie at partnersincommunicationinc.com. My daughter said it's the longest email she's ever heard. But
Yeah, we will put that in the show notes. Now, Laurie, I want to ask you our last question that we ask all of our guests.
sure.
How do you think executives or professionals can get a positive edge in their career?
I'm going to say early on, and I've worked with a lot of young folks who do this, lawyers, architects, accountants. Early on, learn the tools that you need in order to be influential, persuasive, and confident in your communication. And then you will, if you speak for success, you are more likely to succeed. And there's a lot of research to bear that out.
I love it. Influential, persuasive, and confident. Laurie, you have shared a lot of wisdom with us today, and I'm sure that our listeners can use it to be more confident with their communication. We appreciate you being with us.
My pleasure. It was really fun and engaging. I really appreciate it, Porschia.
This episode was brought to you by the Bravebird Career Alliance, the go-to membership designed for seasoned executives and ambitious professionals with everything you need for career planning, strategy, training, and support. Thank you again for listening to the Career 101 podcast. I hope you have at least one key takeaway that you can use in your own career. If you enjoyed hanging out with us, please rate, subscribe, and share this podcast. Until next time, here's to your success.